You've entered void of rules, a realm where normal constraints cease to exist. But beware, traveller, there is one rule here. You've got to hit subscribe. Seriously, it's the only rule we have. We just reached 1,000 brave souls, and we're hunting for 9,000 more to complete our dark ritual. I mean, reach our next goal, so subscribe. Or don't. But remember, the void remembers those who defy the only rule. Now let's get into today's video. Static crackles through the emergency channel, piercing the silence of mission control. A voice strained and desperate breaks through the interference. This is Specialist Zephyr Novak transmitting on emergency channel. Whatever you do, don't open Chamber Epsilon. I repeat, keep Chamber Epsilon sealed. The rules exist for a reason. The transmission cuts abruptly, replaced by a high-pitched alarm and then nothing but dead air. 3 weeks earlier, I stepped aboard the International Space Station Artemis, with excitement coursing through my veins. As a quantum physicist with several controversial papers to my name, this assignment felt like both redemption and opportunity. The 6-month rotation would give me access to cutting-edge equipment and a chance to rebuild my reputation after the Uppsala incident. That first night aboard the station, sleep eluded me. The constant hum of life support systems and the disorienting lack of true darkness kept my mind racing. Around 2:30 AM station time, I ventured out for a drink of water and witnessed something that should have been my first warning. Commander Octavia Thorndyke, the stoic veteran astronaut who had barely acknowledged my existence during orientation, was walking slowly down the corridor towards the station's eastern wing. Her eyes were open but vacant, her movements mechanical. As she passed beneath an overhead light, I noticed how prematurely grey her hair had become. Her file photo showed a woman with dark chestnut hair, but the person before me had silver strands throughout. "Commander?" I called softly. She didn't respond but continued mumbling under her breath. Drawing closer, I caught fragments. "Keep it contained. Follow the rules. Don't let it remember you." I followed at a distance as she approached a sealed door marked simply Epsilon, with a biometric scanner that glowed red in the dimness. She pressed her palm against it, then stopped suddenly, her whole body going rigid. For almost a full minute, she stood frozen before the locked door. Then, as if waking from a trance, she turned and walked back toward the crew quarters, passing me without a flicker of recognition. The next morning at breakfast, Commander Thorndyke showed no signs of her nighttime wandering. When I tried to catch her eye, she merely nodded professionally before turning her attention to Flight Engineer Callisto Vex, discussing maintenance schedules, as if nothing unusual had happened. For the next 3 days, I focused on settling into station routines. The Artemis was NASA's newest orbital laboratory, designed for long-duration missions and cutting-edge research. My assigned projects involved studying particle behavior in microgravity, nothing that would explain a restricted area or a commander's somnambulant episodes. On my 4th day aboard, the equipment in my lab began malfunctioning. Calibration settings reset themselves overnight. Data disappeared from secure servers. Most disturbing was the lab camera, which should have been recording my experiments continuously, instead captured hours of footage, showing nothing but static interspersed with frames of what appeared to be my own face, watching the camera with an expression I didn't recognize. That evening, as I was documenting the anomalies, my tablet chimed with a direct message from Commander Thorndyke. "Observation deck, 2100 hours, come alone." The observation deck was empty when I arrived except for the commander, who stood with her back to me, gazing out at Earth below. Without turning, she spoke. "You've noticed things, Specialist Novak. Things that don't add up." "I've had some equipment malfunctions," I replied carefully. "And I saw you the other night, walking toward the eastern section." She turned then, and I stifled a gasp. In the harsh lighting, I could see the commander's face clearly for the first time. Her personnel file listed her age as 42, but the woman before me looked at least 20 years older. Deep lines etched her forehead and framed her mouth. Her left hand exhibited a pronounced tremor as she gestured for me to sit. "Every crew member on Artemis serves a rotation in Chamber Epsilon," she said without preamble. "We call it feeding the chamber. Your turn comes next Thursday." Feeding? What exactly is Chamber Epsilon? The commander's eyes darted to the corners of the room before she removed a small device from her pocket and activated it. "Signal jammer," she explained. "What I'm about to tell you isn't in any official NASA briefing." From beneath her seat, she produced a titanium case secured with a biometric lock. Her trembling fingers pressed against the sensor, and the case opened with a soft hiss. Inside was a tablet unlike any standard issue equipment. Its casing appeared to be ceramic rather than metal, with strange circuit patterns etched into its surface. "These are the rules," she said, handing me the device. "They will seem arbitrary, excessive. They are neither. Each one was written in blood." The screen illuminated as it recognized my touch, displaying a simple header: Chamber Epsilon Protocols. Below it were 8 rules, the text seeming to shift subtly whenever I blinked or looked away. "Read them," Commander Thorndyke instructed. "Memorize them. Your life and the lives of everyone on this station depend on your absolute compliance." I began to read. Rule 1. Chamber Epsilon visitation is permitted only on Thursdays between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. station time. No exceptions for any circumstances. Rule 2. The copper-plated EVA suit with blue markings must be worn completely sealed when within 20 feet of the chamber. Ensure all seals are triple-checked. Rule 3. The obsidian anomaly at the chamber's core must never make contact with organic material. Minimum safe distance is 3 feet. Rule 4. If harmonic resonance occurs, manifesting as a singing glass sound, evacuate immediately and initiate 24-hour lockdown of the eastern wing. Rule 5. Chamber lighting must follow precise sequence: 7 minutes ultraviolet, 15 minutes standard, 7 minutes infrared. Time must be exact. Rule 6. Observer protocol. Mandatory. 1 person inside, 1 monitoring from antechamber. Communication must remain constant. If communication breaks for more than 30 seconds, emergency extraction is authorized. Rule 7. If temperature fluctuations exceed 3.6 degrees in either direction, activate Prometheus protocol and notify Commander immediately. Rule 8. All Chamber Epsilon experiences are classified level Omega. Discussion with non-cleared personnel or Earthside contacts results in immediate termination and permanent quarantine. I looked up from the tablet, my mouth dry. What is this? Some kind of hazing ritual for new crew members? Commander Thorndyke's expression remained grave. "I wish it were. Your background in quantum physics is why you're here, Specialist Novak. You're uniquely qualified to understand what's happening in Chamber Epsilon, but that understanding makes you vulnerable." "Vulnerable to what?" "That's the wrong question," she replied, taking back the tablet and securing it in the case. "The question is not what, but where. And the answer is somewhere else. Somewhere that should never have connected to our reality." She rose, signaling our meeting was over. "Flight Engineer Vex will accompany you on your first chamber visit. They've performed more rotations than anyone else on the crew. Follow their lead exactly." As I turned to leave, the commander grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Novak, one more thing. If you start dreaming about it, tell me immediately." The next few days passed in a blur of routine tasks and mounting anxiety. I tried to focus on my official research, but my thoughts kept returning to the commander's cryptic warnings and those 8 strange rules. I attempted to access information about Chamber Epsilon through the station's database, but every query returned the same response: clearance level, Omega required. On Thursday morning, I found Flight Engineer Callisto Vex waiting outside my quarters. Tall and rail-thin, with a perpetually serious expression, Vex had been polite but distant since my arrival today. However, their demeanour was decidedly colder. "Preparation begins now," they said without greeting. "Follow me to decontamination." As we walked, I studied Vex more closely. Like the Commander, they appeared older than their file suggested, with premature grey streaking their dark hair. Most unsettling were the scars visible around their eyes, thin, precise lines that formed partial concentric circles. In the decontamination chamber, Vex demonstrated an elaborate preparation ritual that went far beyond standard protocols. We showered in a solution that smelled faintly of copper, then applied a clear gel to all exposed skin. "Barrier cream," Vex explained, "developed after the Kessler incident." "What happened during the Kessler incident?" Vex's hand froze momentarily. "We don't discuss previous incidents, focus on the present and the rules." Next came the suits, not standard EVA gear, but specially modified versions, with distinctive copper plating and blue markings along the seams. Vex checked each of my seals 3 times, their fingers moving with practiced precision. "The chamber affects different people in different ways," they said as they worked. "Some hear things, some see things, some feel nothing at all until later." Later? After effects can manifest days or weeks after exposure. That's why we monitor all vital signs constantly. They tapped a small device now attached to my suit's chest plate. "This records everything. Heart rate, blood pressure, neural activity. If anything spikes, say something immediately." Fully suited, we made our way to the eastern wing. The corridor leading to Chamber Epsilon was noticeably cooler than the rest of the station, and the usual mechanical hum seemed muted, as if something was absorbing the sound waves. The antechamber contained monitoring equipment and a large observation window, looking into Chamber Epsilon itself. Through it, I got my first glimpse of what had inspired such elaborate precautions. The chamber was hexagonal, larger than I'd expected, with walls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Various instruments lined the perimeter, many of which I recognized as advanced sensors and spectrometers, but dominating the center of the room was the anomaly Commander Thorndyke had mentioned, a perfectly smooth obsidian surface approximately 2 meters in diameter. It hovered motionless, defying gravity, and appeared two-dimensional from some angles, yet somehow suggested infinite depth from others. "What am I looking at?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Your field is quantum physics," Vex replied. "You tell me." I studied the readings on the monitoring equipment. "These can't be right. Negative mass signatures, inverted radiation patterns." "They're correct," Vex said grimly. "That's why we need specialists like you, to make sense of what shouldn't be possible." They checked their watch. "It's 2:58. Remember the rules. I'll observe from here, maintain constant communication. The feeding must be completed precisely." "What exactly am I feeding it?" Vex's expression darkened. "Information, attention. Observation itself seems to sustain it. Or maybe it sustains us by keeping something else at bay. Either way, the ritual must be performed." At exactly 3 p.m, the antechamber door slid open, and I entered Chamber Epsilon alone. The air felt different immediately, heavier, as if it had microscopic resistance. Each step required slightly more effort than physics should allow. Following Vex's instructions through my earpiece, I activated the lighting sequence, ultraviolet first, bathing the room in purple-tinged darkness. The obsidian anomaly appeared to drink in the light, its surface rippling almost imperceptibly. "Begin primary observations," Vex directed. "Read all instrument values aloud." I moved carefully around the chamber's perimeter, keeping my distance from the central anomaly while recording measurements. Temperature, 68.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Radiation levels, fluctuating but within acceptable parameters. magnetic field strength impossibly high, yet contained to the anomaly's immediate vicinity. Throughout the process, I noticed Vex quietly counting under their breath, a steady rhythm that wasn't part of the official protocol they'd explained. 7 minutes passed and the lighting automatically shifted to standard illumination. The anomaly's response was immediate and unsettling. Its surface became more defined, more present somehow, as if gaining substance from the light itself. And then I noticed something Vex hadn't warned me about. When viewed from my peripheral vision, shadows seemed to move across the anomaly's surface, shapes that vanished when I tried to focus directly on them. "Vex," I said quietly, "I'm seeing movement on the surface." A momentary pause. "That's normal. Continue the readings." But it didn't feel normal. As I continued circling the chamber, I couldn't shake the sensation that the anomaly was tracking my movement, despite having no visible features. The feeling of being observed was overwhelming, like standing in a room full of eyes all fixed on you, though you can't see a single one. At the 15-minute mark, the lights shifted again to infrared. In this red-tinged glow, the anomaly appeared to contract slightly, its edges becoming more defined. "Final readings," Vex instructed, their voice notably tighter than before. I completed the measurements, noticing that several values had shifted dramatically from the beginning of the session. The chamber had cooled by 3.2 degrees, not enough to trigger Rule 7, but close. "Chamber feeding complete," Vex announced as the lights returned to normal at the 29-minute mark. "Exit procedure initiating." As I turned to leave, movement caught my eye, a ripple across the obsidian surface like a stone dropped into still water. Just for an instant, I thought I saw something reflected that wasn't in the room, a face perhaps, or the suggestion of one. Back in the antechamber, Vex's relief was palpable as they helped me remove the specialized suit. "You did well," they said, the first compliment I'd received since arriving on the station. "Some people panic their first time, start seeing things that aren't there." "What if the things they see are there?" I asked. "What exactly is that anomaly, Vex?" They busied themselves with storing the suits, avoiding my gaze. "Above my clearance level. Above yours, too." "But you've been in there more than anyone else. You must have theories." Vex's hands stilled momentarily. "Theories get people killed, Novak. Following the rules keeps us alive." They checked my vital sign readings one last time. "Debrief with Commander Thorndyke in 1 hour. Get some rest before then." But rest was the last thing on my mind. Instead, I headed straight for the station's archives, determined to find answers about Chamber Epsilon and its mysterious feeding ritual. The station's digital archives proved a dead end. All files related to Chamber Epsilon were encrypted behind clearance levels I couldn't access. However, the Artemis had been designed with redundant systems, including old-fashioned physical documentation stored in the library section. There, buried among technical manuals and crew rotation schedules, I discovered a hidden compartment behind a loose panel. Inside was a personal tablet belonging to Dr. Lysander Quill, a physicist who had served aboard the previous station, the ISS Horizon, before the Artemis was commissioned. The tablet's entries ended abruptly 3 years ago, around the time Dr. Quill had reportedly been reassigned to an Earth-based position. That night, safely back in my quarters, I began reading Quill's personal logs. Day 47. The anomaly continues to defy conventional analysis. Director Ashford insists we push forward with the resonance tests despite Kessler's objections. I'm beginning to think Kessler is right. There's something purposeful about how it responds to our observations. Day 53. Breakthrough today. The anomaly doesn't just absorb energy, it remembers those who observe it. Repeated exposure strengthens this connection. Wong joked that it's like teaching a dog to recognize its owner, but I don't think we're the owners in this relationship. Day 68. Kessler reported hearing voices coming from inside the anomaly. Administration dismissed it as stress-induced hallucination, but this morning I heard them too. Not in English, not in any language I recognize, but somehow I understood they were calling for someone named Ashford. Director Ashford has never entered the chamber himself. Day 72. Wong didn't show up for his shift. We found him in the chamber, though the logs show the door never opened. His eyes. I can't describe what happened to his eyes. Kessler is establishing protocols for future interactions. God help us if they're not enough. The final entry was dated 3 days later. Something followed me out. I see it in reflective surfaces. Behind me, always just out of direct sight. Kessler says termination is the only option now, but I'm taking precautions of my own. If you're reading this, know that it remembers. It watches, and it's finding ways through. I close the tablet, a chill running down my spine despite the regulated temperature of my quarters. Quill's logs raised more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. Chamber Epsilon contained something far more dangerous than anyone had admitted to me. The next morning, the station felt different. Crew members who had previously been friendly now avoided eye contact. In the mess hall, conversations fell silent when I approached. Only navigator Orion Frost acknowledged me, though his behavior was strange in its own way. As we ate breakfast, I noticed him absently drawing intricate patterns in the condensation on his cup while staring fixedly at Earth through the viewport. "Beautiful view," I commented, trying to break the awkward silence. "It's different today," Frost replied without looking at me. "Can't you see it? The coastlines have shifted." Before I could respond, he abruptly stood and left, leaving behind his half-finished meal and the strange patterns he'd drawn, concentric circles intersected by lines that seemed to form an eye. Later that day, I encountered Dr. Indigo Wren in the hydroponics bay. The botanist was usually cheerful, proud of the vegetables and flowers she cultivated to supplement the crew's diet and psychological well-being. Today, however, she was systematically uprooting and disposing of plants near the eastern wall, the section closest to Chamber Epsilon. "Something wrong with the crops?" I asked. She flinched at my voice. "They're growing wrong," she said after a moment's hesitation. "Started 3 days ago. Look." She held up a tomato plant. Instead of growing upward toward the light, the stems curved downward, and the leaves had developed unusual serrations along their edges. Most disturbing were the tomatoes themselves. Their flesh was deep purple rather than red. "Only happens to plants in this section," Dr. Wren continued, her voice lowered as if afraid of being overheard. "The ones closest to that chamber. Have you been inside yet?" When I nodded, her expression grew more concerned. "Be careful, Novak. After my first rotation, I started sleepwalking. Found myself trying to access the chamber at night. Commander had to restrict my clearance after hours. Has anyone told you what's actually in there, beyond the official explanations?" Dr. Wren glanced nervously toward the cameras monitoring the hydroponics bay. "Not here," she whispered, "but check the observation deck, portside storage locker. Someone's been collecting evidence." That evening, after completing my assigned research tasks, I made my way to the observation deck. The portside storage locker contained emergency oxygen supplies and survival gear, and behind them, taped to the back wall, were dozens of mission patches from previous ISS expeditions. What caught my eye was a series of patches dating back 6 years, all featuring a stylized Epsilon symbol. The earliest ones labeled it as the Quantum Resonance Laboratory. Later patches omitted any description. The most recent ones showed the Epsilon symbol encircled by what appeared to be a containment barrier. I was still examining the patches when a voice behind me made me jump. "Finding anything interesting, Specialist Novak?" I turned to find Communications Officer Phoenix Lamar watching me with an unreadable expression. Tall and athletic with close-cropped hair, Lamar had been friendly during my first days aboard. showing me how to navigate the station's complicated communication systems. Just familiarizing myself with station history, I replied, trying to sound casual. History is a flexible thing up here, Lamar said, moving closer to examine the patches. Especially when it comes to Chamber Epsilon. Did you know that section of the station has been rebuilt 3 times? Official records say it was due to micrometeorite damage. And unofficially? Lamar's eyes met mine. Containment failures. The first one killed 4 people. The second was worse. We lost an entire crew. The bodies were never recovered. Why continue the project if it's so dangerous? Because shutting it down might be even more dangerous. Lamar sighed heavily. Look, I'm scheduled as your observer for your next chamber rotation. I'm not supposed to tell you this, but people who ask too many questions tend to be assigned more frequent rotations. The chamber, it develops preferences. A chill ran down my spine. Preferences? It responds differently to different people. Some it barely notices. Others it fixates on. Lamar placed a hand on my shoulder. I've seen the logs. Your vital signs during your first visit showed unusual patterns. Just follow the rules, Novak. Don't give it reasons to notice you more than it already has. With that cryptic warning, Lamar left me alone with the mission patches and my growing sense of dread. My second chamber visit came 3 days later. Communications Officer Lamar was waiting in the antechamber when I arrived, already suited up in the copper-plated gear. Remember, they said as they helped check my seals, maintain constant communication. If you feel dizzy, disoriented, or start hearing anything unusual, tell me immediately. The entrance procedure was identical to my first visit, but this time the chamber felt different from the moment I stepped inside. The air seemed thicker, almost viscous, and the usual ambient sounds of the station were muffled to near silence. Initiating lighting sequence, I announced, activating the ultraviolet cycle. As the purple light filled the chamber, I began taking the required measurements. Temperature steady at 67.9 degrees Fahrenheit. Radiation levels within expected parameters. Magnetic field strength consistent with previous readings. But something was different about the anomaly itself. Though its physical appearance remained unchanged, the same obsidian surface hovering motionless in the center of the room, I could have sworn it had rotated slightly, reorienting itself toward me. Novak, your heart rate is elevated. Lamar's voice came through my earpiece. Everything okay in there? Fine, I replied, though my mouth had gone dry. Just thought I saw something. As I continued circling the chamber, recording measurements, I noticed the anomaly seemed to track my movement more obviously than during my first visit. When I moved left, it appeared to shift slightly right, always maintaining the same face toward me, like a flower following the sun. 7 minutes passed, and the lighting changed to standard illumination. In the brighter light, I could see the surface of the anomaly more clearly, and what I saw sent ice through my veins. Faint patterns were visible now, like ripples in dark water, forming and dissolving in sequences that almost suggested language. Lamar, I said quietly, are you seeing these patterns on the anomaly? A pause. No patterns visible on monitors. What are you seeing exactly? Before I could respond, a strange audio feedback loop cut through my earpiece. A high-pitched whine followed by what sounded like voices speaking in multiple languages simultaneously. Having some audio issues, Lamar reported. Stand by. The voices continued for several seconds, overlapping and echoing until they suddenly stopped, replaced by Lamar's voice. You copy? Novak, do you copy? I copy, I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. What was that? Unknown interference. Checking systems now. Continue with protocol. I forced myself to focus on the readings. 15 minutes under standard illumination passed without further incident, though I couldn't shake the feeling that the patterns on the anomaly's surface were responding to my presence, rearranging themselves whenever I looked directly at them. As the lighting shifted to infrared for the final 7 minutes, the temperature in the chamber began to fluctuate. 67.9 degrees Fahrenheit, 68.5 degrees Fahrenheit, 66.7 degrees Fahrenheit. The fluctuations weren't enough to trigger Rule 7, but they were unusual compared to the stable readings of my first visit. Almost done, Lamar assured me. 1 minute remaining. I completed the final measurements, eager to exit the chamber. Just as I was turning toward the door, I caught a glimpse of movement in my peripheral vision, the anomaly's surface rippling violently like disturbed water. For just an instant, I thought I saw my own reflection in its obsidian depths, but it wasn't quite right. The reflection's movements were slightly out of sync with mine, its expression different, watching me. Back in the antechamber, Lamar helped me remove my suit, their expression concerned. "Your readings were all over the place in there," they said, examining the data on their tablet. "And you seemed distracted. What did you see?" I hesitated, remembering Rule 8. All chamber Epsilon experiences were classified level Omega, but Lamar had been inside. They were cleared. "The anomaly responded differently this time," I admitted. "There were patterns on its surface, and it seemed to track me. And at the end, I thought I saw a reflection that didn't match my movements." Lamar's face paled. "I'm reporting this to Commander Thorndyke immediately. These are the same symptoms Dr. Quill reported before." They stopped abruptly, seeming to catch themselves. "Before what?" I pressed. "Nothing. Get some rest. And Novak, if you start having unusual dreams, tell someone right away." That night, I did dream. Vivid, disjointed images of floating through endless darkness toward a distant light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. In the dream, I knew with absolute certainty that I was being watched, evaluated, remembered. I woke gasping for breath, my quarters pitch black except for the soft glow of emergency lighting. The station's night cycle was in full effect, but something felt wrong. The normal sounds of life support systems were absent, replaced by a profound silence. Rising from my bunk, I checked the environmental controls. All readings were normal, yet the air felt heavy, resistant to my movements. When I tried to activate the main lights, nothing happened. A sudden movement caught my eye, a shadow passing across the small window of my quarters. Pressing close to the glass, I peered into the darkened corridor. Nothing visible, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something had just passed by. My tablet chimed with an incoming message. "Meet me in hydroponics. Emergency, Ren." Throwing on a jumpsuit, I made my way through the unnaturally silent station. The hydroponics bay was illuminated only by the grow lights, creating a surreal landscape of plant silhouettes and shifting shadows. "Dr. Wren?" I called, keeping my voice low. No response. The hydroponics bay appeared empty, though the plants nearest the eastern wall seemed to stir despite the absence of any air movement. Drawing closer, I noticed something alarming. The plants were growing visibly, stems extending and leaves unfurling at an impossible rate. A noise behind me, footsteps, then a sharp intake of breath. "What are you doing here?" Dr. Wren stood in the doorway, her expression alarmed. "It's the middle of night cycle." "You sent me a message," I said, showing her my tablet. "Asked me to meet you here." Dr. Wren approached cautiously, examining the tablet with a frown. "I didn't send this. I've been asleep in my quarters. Who else has access to your direct communication channel?" A cold realization settled over me. The station's systems are all integrated. If someone or something gained access to the central computers... Wren's face paled. "We need to tell the commander. Now." We found Commander Thorndyke already awake in her quarters, hunched over a tablet displaying security footage of Chamber Epsilon. She didn't seem surprised to see us. "It's happening faster this time," she said without preamble. "The anomaly is becoming more active. Look." On the screen, the obsidian surface in Chamber Epsilon was visibly pulsing, expanding and contracting like a breathing lung. Instruments around the chamber recorded wildly fluctuating readings. "I didn't send that message to Novak," Wren said, showing the commander my tablet. "Something in the system did." Commander Thorndyke nodded grimly. "It's learning, adapting. The chamber contains it physically, but its influence is extending beyond the barriers we've established." She turned to me, her eyes hard. "You've accessed information about previous incidents, Dr. Quill's logs." It wasn't a question. "Yes," I admit, "I found his tablet. What happened to him?" "Officially, he was reassigned to Earth. Unofficially." She sighed heavily. "The anomaly established a connection with him, made him a conduit. We had to jettison him in an escape pod. His last transmission reported that he could see through the anomaly to what lay beyond. Another reality, attempting to merge with ours." "And the rules?" I asked. "Who created them?" "The survivors of the first major incident. Every rule exists because breaking it triggered a catastrophic event." The commander's voice dropped. "The chamber doesn't just contain the anomaly. It contains what the anomaly connects to. Something that wants in." Dr. Wren shuddered visibly. "And now it's found a new focus. You, Novak. How do you know?" Commander Thorndyke gestured to my vital sign readings from the chamber visits. "These patterns are nearly identical to Quill's before he was compromised. The anomaly has recognized you as compatible." The implication hung heavy in the air. "So, what do we do?" "We increase security protocols. Your next chamber visit is cancelled. We'll assign..." A sudden alarm cut through the room, a high-pitched tone I hadn't heard before. The commander's face went ashen as she consulted her tablet. "Proximity alert in chamber Epsilon. Something's triggering the motion sensors inside, but the door remains sealed." She tapped rapidly on her screen, bringing up live footage from inside the chamber. The anomaly was changing, its surface roiling, like boiling liquid. Around it, the air itself seemed to distort, creating ripples of visual interference. "Activating emergency containment," Commander Thorndyke announced, entering a series of commands. Steel shutters slammed down over the chamber's observation window, and additional barriers engaged around the perimeter. "Will that hold it?" Dr. Wren asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It has before," the commander replied, though she didn't sound entirely convinced. "We need to..." Her words were cut off as every light on the station flickered simultaneously. The gravity shifted momentarily, causing us to float inches above the floor, before slamming back down with jarring force. "Station-wide power fluctuation," Commander Thorndyke announced, already moving toward the door. "All senior officers report to Command Center immediately. Novak, return to your quarters and stay there." "That's an order." I did as instructed, making my way through corridors that now seemed foreign and threatening. The station's usual ambient noise had returned, but it was punctuated by occasional static bursts from the communication system and ominous creaking sounds from the structure itself. Back in my quarters, I found my reflection in the small bathroom mirror unsettling. My eyes looked different somehow, the pupils slightly misshapen. Lack of sleep, I told myself, stress, paranoia. But as I turned away, I could have sworn my reflection remained facing the mirror for a fraction of a second too long. The next 3 days passed in a haze of increasing strangeness. The station's systems experienced intermittent failures. Communications dropped, environmental controls fluctuated, lights flickered for no apparent reason. Crew members moved about their duties with tight expressions and hushed voices. Navigator Frost was found drawing complex patterns on the walls of his quarters, claiming they were corrections to Earth's coastlines. Dr. Wren reported that all plants in the hydroponics bay had died overnight. Their cellular structure somehow reversed, so they grew inward, consuming themselves. Most disturbing were the reports from multiple crew members of seeing me in places I hadn't been, in the mess hall during my scheduled lab time, in the exercise room when I was meeting with Commander Thorndyke, in the observation deck when I was supposedly asleep in my quarters. Time slippage, the commander explained when I confronted her about the sightings. Your connection to the anomaly is causing temporal inconsistencies. You're experiencing moments of being in two places simultaneously. That's not physically possible, I insisted. Neither is what's in Chamber Epsilon, she countered, yet here we are. My sleeping hours became a torment of vivid dreams, falling through darkness toward a light that grew increasingly defined as a tear in reality, a gateway between here and somewhere else. Each time I approached it, I could feel something waiting on the other side, watching with eager anticipation. The station psychologist, Dr. Meridian Thorne, was assigned to evaluate my mental state. They found me in my lab, working on calculations I didn't remember starting. Specialist Novak, Dr. Thorne said gently, I need to ask you a few questions about your recent experiences. The evaluation seemed standard at first. Questions about sleep patterns, stress levels, cognitive function. But as it progressed, Dr. Thorne's expression grew increasingly concerned. Can you tell me what you've been working on? They asked, gesturing to my calculations. I looked down at the tablet in my hands, seeing the equations and diagrams for the first time. The work was in my handwriting, but completely unfamiliar, complex formulations that seemed to describe a bridge between 2 points in space-time. I don't remember doing this, I admitted, a chill running down my spine. When did I start working on this? Dr. Thorne took the tablet carefully, studying the equations. These calculations appear to describe a theoretical framework for traversing between parallel dimensions. The mathematics is beyond advanced. They looked up at me with grave concern. You've been in this lab for 6 hours, Novak. Security footage shows you working continuously, never once looking up. My stomach dropped. That's not possible. I just got here. This is what I was afraid of, Dr. Thorne said, setting the tablet aside. You're experiencing fugue states, periods of activity you have no memory of. Combined with the temporal anomalies, this is consistent with what happened to Dr. Quill before. They trailed off, but I knew what remained unsaid, before he had to be jettisoned from the station. I need to examine your quarters, Dr. Thorne said, already moving toward the door. Previous cases showed distinctive behavioral patterns during these episodes. Together we walked to my living space, where Dr. Thorne stopped abruptly at the threshold, their face draining of colour. Oh God. Every available surface of my quarters was covered with drawings. The walls, ceiling, even the floor. All depicted the obsidian anomaly from Chamber Epsilon, rendered from impossible angles that hurt the eyes to look at. Some showed it as a gateway with something reaching through from the other side. I didn't do this, I whispered, though even to my own ears the denial sounded hollow. Someone did, Dr. Thorne replied grimly, and you're the only one with access to these quarters. They reached for their communicator. Commander, we have a situation. Level Omega protocols recommended for Specialist Novak. Full quarantine. Within minutes, security personnel arrived to escort me to the station's medical bay. Commander Thorndyke met us there, her face grave as she examined Dr. Thorne's report and photos of my quarters. It's progressing more rapidly than with Quill, she said, turning to me. The connection between you and the anomaly is strengthening. We need to break it before it's too late. How? I asked, struggling to keep the desperation from my voice. Distance, she replied. We're preparing an emergency shuttle to take you back to Earth. Once you're beyond the anomaly's range of influence, the connection should weaken. Hope flickered briefly, but the commander's next words extinguished it. But first, we need to understand exactly what's happening. You're going back into Chamber Epsilon under maximum security protocols. One last time. She held up a hand to silence my protest. It's our best chance to gather critical data before evacuation. When? I asked. resignation settling over me. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m, I'll be your observer." That night, as I lay in the medical bay under constant surveillance, the dreams intensified. I was floating in darkness, but now there was a distinct shape within the distant light, a figure that beckoned to me with movements that seemed almost familiar. It was trying to show me something, trying to communicate. I woke with a gasp, the medical bay's lights automatically brightening in response to my elevated vital signs. Checking the clock, I saw it was 2:15 a.m, the middle of night cycle. Something felt different. The constant background hum of the station had changed pitch slightly, becoming almost melodic. And though I was alone in the medical bay, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Turning toward the small observation window in the door, I caught a glimpse of movement, a silhouette passing by. Rising from the bed, I approached the window cautiously. The corridor outside was empty, yet, as I watched, the shadows seemed to deepen and shift in ways that defied the stable lighting. Within one particularly dark patch, I saw my own face staring back at me, but wrong somehow, the proportions subtly altered, as if viewed through rippling water. I stumbled backward, my heart racing. A hallucination, I told myself, sleep deprivation, stress. The shadow passed and was gone, leaving me alone with the eerie melodic hum that now seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Morning brought no relief. The station felt fundamentally wrong. Corridors stretched longer than they should. Rooms appeared slightly different than I remembered them. Crew members moved with mechanical precision, their eyes never quite meeting mine. Commander Thorndyke arrived at 2:30 p.m. to escort me to Chamber Epsilon. She looked worse than ever. Her face gaunt, dark circles under her eyes, her left hand trembling visibly. "The anomaly has been increasingly active since your last visit," she explained as we made our way to the eastern wing. "Energy readings off the charts. We've had to increase containment measures twice." In the preparation area, Flight Engineer Vex was waiting with the copper-plated suits. Their expression was grim as they helped me suit up. "The rules exist for a reason," Vex said quietly as they checked my seals. "Remember that, whatever happens in there." The antechamber felt colder than before, the air thick with tension. Through the observation window, I could see that additional monitoring equipment had been installed around Chamber Epsilon, and new containment barriers surrounded the anomaly itself. "We'll maintain constant communication," Commander Thorndyke assured me, her voice steady despite her obvious exhaustion. "At the first sign of trouble, we extract you immediately. Understood?" I nodded, my mouth too dry for words. At precisely 3 p.m, the chamber door slid open. Taking a deep breath, I stepped inside. The difference was immediately apparent. The air felt charged, almost electrically alive against my skin, despite the protective suit. The usual resistance to movement had intensified, making each step feel like wading through invisible currents. "Initiating lighting sequence," I announced, activating the ultraviolet cycle with trembling fingers. As the purple light filled the chamber, the anomaly responded with unprecedented intensity. Its obsidian surface rippled violently, patterns forming and dissolving with frantic energy. The shapes were more defined now, almost like symbols or letters in a language just beyond comprehension. "Novak, your vitals are spiking," Commander Thorndyke's voice came through my earpiece. "What are you seeing?" "The anomaly is more active," I reported, fighting to keep my voice steady. "The patterns are more defined. It's almost like it's trying to communicate." I began taking the required measurements, circling the chamber at a safe distance from the central anomaly. Temperature fluctuating between 67.2 degrees Fahrenheit and 69.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Radiation levels higher than previous readings, but still within containment parameters. Magnetic field strength increasing steadily. 7 minutes passed, and the lighting shifted to standard illumination. In the brighter light, the anomaly's surface changed again. Less frantic, but more focused, the patterns converging toward the center like a closing iris. And then I heard it, a faint but distinct sound like crystal glasses being played with wet fingers. A high, clear tone that seemed to resonate with something inside my chest. "Commander," I said urgently, "I'm hearing harmonic resonance." "Confirmed," came the reply, tension evident in her voice. "Initiating emergency protocols. Prepare for immediate extraction." But I found myself unable to move toward the exit. The resonance grew louder, more complex, resolving into patterns that felt almost like language. I stood transfixed, feeling as if I were on the verge of understanding something profound. "Novak!" Commander Thorndyke's voice cut through my trance. "The temperature is dropping rapidly. Get out now!" I glanced at the monitoring equipment. 64.8 degrees Fahrenheit, 63.1 degrees Fahrenheit, 61.5 degrees Fahrenheit. The chamber was cooling at an impossible rate, approaching the threshold specified in Rule 7. "Novak, respond!" The commander's voice was frantic now. "We're initiating remote extraction." I turned towards the door just as a violent tremor shook the station. The lights flickered, plunging the chamber into momentary darkness before emergency backups engaged, bathing everything in eerie red light. "Station-wide power fluctuation," Commander Thorndyke reported. "Systems rebooting, stand by." In that moment of chaos, something changed. The harmonic resonance intensified, and the anomaly's surface bulged outward, stretching toward me like a liquid reaching for contact. I backed away, remembering Rule 3. The obsidian anomaly must never make contact with organic material. "Commander, the anomaly is changing configuration. I need immediate extraction." No response. The communication system had gone silent. Another tremor, stronger than the first. Equipment crashed to the floor as the station shuddered. The temperature continued to drop. 59.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Rule 7 violated. Prometheus protocol should be activated. But with communications down, I was on my own. I made for the door, fighting against the increasingly thick air. Each step required enormous effort, as if the space itself resisted my movement. Behind me, I could hear the harmonic resonance changing pitch, becoming almost desperate. The door to the antechamber remained sealed. Through the small window, I could see Commander Thorndyke frantically working at the controls, her face a mask of determination and fear. But the emergency override wasn't responding. The power fluctuations had compromised the system. I was trapped in Chamber Epsilon with an increasingly active anomaly and dropping temperatures. 57.3 degrees Fahrenheit, 56.1 degrees Fahrenheit. Turning back to face the chamber, I saw the anomaly had changed again. Its surface now rippled with such intensity that it seemed on the verge of losing cohesion entirely. The patterns had resolved into a distinct shape, a human silhouette that mimicked my movements with perfect synchronization. "What are you?" I whispered, knowing that there would be no answer I could comprehend. The harmonic resonance shifted again, becoming almost gentle. The temperature stabilized at 55.8 degrees Fahrenheit, still well below safe parameters but no longer dropping. The anomaly's surface calmed slightly, the human silhouette more defined now. It was me, I realized with dawning horror. The anomaly had created a perfect reflection of me, mirroring my every movement with flawless precision. Except it wasn't quite perfect. As I watched, the reflection began to deviate, making subtle movements I wasn't making, tilting its head curiously, extending a hand in what almost seemed like greeting. Through the observation window, I could see Commander Thorndyke had been joined by Flight Engineer Vex. Together they worked frantically at the controls, their faces grim with concentration, but I knew what they were thinking. The same thing that had happened with Dr. Quill was happening to me. The anomaly had established a connection, and now it was using me as a conduit. A sudden, terrible realization struck me. The resonance, the temperature drop, the power fluctuations, they weren't random malfunctions. They were deliberate. The anomaly was isolating me, creating perfect conditions for whatever came next. The reflection continued to move independently, becoming less a mirror and more a separate entity. It studied me with what I could only interpret as curiosity, its movements becoming more fluid and natural. And then it spoke, not in words, but in a sequence of harmonic tones that somehow translated directly into meaning within my mind. We have been watching, learning. You are suitable. Suitable for what? I asked, knowing somehow that it would understand. Transition, exchange, continuity. The reflection extended its hand again, the obsidian surface stretching toward me, like a liquid bridge across reality. Through the observation window, I saw Commander Thorndyke shouting something, her face contorted with urgency. Emergency lights flashed in the antechamber, and Vex was inputting override codes with desperate speed. They knew what was happening. They had seen it before, with Quill and others. I backed away from the approaching tendril of obsidian material, remembering Rule 3 with frantic clarity. No contact, no connection. But there was nowhere to go. The chamber door remained sealed, and the anomaly's extension moved with surprising speed, cutting off my retreat. "Commander!" I shouted, though I knew the communication system remained down. "Initiate Prometheus Protocol." The obsidian tendril paused, hovering just inches from my suited form. The reflection within the anomaly's surface tilted its head again, as if confused by my resistance. "We offer completion, understanding, purpose." "You offer invasion," I replied, pressing my back against the chamber wall. "You want to use me to cross over." The reflection's expression changed, still my face, but twisted into something alien and cold. "You have already begun the process. Your mind opens to us, your time fractures. Soon your physical form will accommodate our passage." With horrifying clarity, I understood what had been happening. The lost time, the drawings in my quarters, the calculations I didn't remember making. The anomaly had already been working through me, preparing me as a vessel. A sudden, violent tremor shook the station stronger than any before. Equipment crashed around me, and a section of ceiling panel broke loose, striking me across the shoulder. The impact knocked me sideways, my balance compromised in the strange, resistant air. I fell towards the obsidian tendril, my arm extending instinctively to break my fall. Time seemed to slow as I watched my gloved hand approach the dark surface. Rule 3 echoed in my mind. No contact with organic material. But the suit protected me. As long as the seals held, I was safe. Then I saw it. A hairline crack in my glove, right at the wrist seal. The impact had compromised my suit. My hand connected with the obsidian surface, and everything changed. Cold beyond imagining shot up my arm. Not physical cold, but something deeper, as if the very atoms of my being were being rearranged. The chamber around me seemed to stretch and distort, perspectives shifting in nauseating ways, and I could see through the anomaly to what lay beyond. Another space, another reality, pressing against our own like two soap bubbles touching. Within that space, shapes moved with terrible purpose, reaching toward the thinning barrier between worlds. I tried to pull away, but the connection had been made. The obsidian material flowed over my glove, seeping through the crack in the seal to touch my skin directly. Where it made contact, my flesh darkened and hardened, becoming something neither fully human nor fully other. Through a haze of pain and disorientation, I saw the observation window shatter as Vex fired an emergency breach charge. Commander Thorndyke rushed in, protected by her suit, carrying what looked like a portable containment unit. "Prometheus Protocol initiated. she shouted, though her voice sounded distant and distorted to my ears. "Containment team standby for extraction and isolation." The commander approached cautiously, the containment unit humming with power, but she stopped short when she saw my arm, now almost completely transformed into the same obsidian material as the anomaly. "Novak," she said, her voice heavy with regret. "Can you still hear me?" I tried to respond, but my voice emerged as the same crystalline resonance that had filled the chamber earlier. Inside my mind, thoughts that weren't my own began to take root and flower. "We come. Through you, we come." "I'm sorry," Commander Thorndyke said, activating the containment unit. "We can't risk full breach." A field of energy erupted from the device, encircling me and the anomaly together. The obsidian surface reacted violently, twisting and bulging against the containment field. Through the observation window, I could see the rest of the crew gathering, their faces masks of horror and pity. They knew what came next. They had done this before. The field contracted, pushing me closer to the anomaly. I fought against it, clinging to my humanity with desperate strength. "Commander, please," I managed to force out, my voice a strange hybrid of human speech and harmonic tones. "I'm still here. I can fight this." For a moment, I thought I saw hesitation in her eyes. Then her expression hardened. "That's what Quill said too, right before he killed 3 crew members and nearly breached the station hull." She adjusted the containment field settings. "I'm sorry, Novak. Truly." The field contracted further, forcing me back against the anomaly. Its surface parted like liquid, beginning to engulf me. The cold sensation spread throughout my body as more of the obsidian material made contact with my skin. With my last moment of clarity, I understood the terrible truth. I wasn't being consumed by the anomaly. I was becoming it. A conduit, a bridge, a doorway between realities. And something was coming through. Static crackles through the emergency channel, piercing the silence of mission control. A voice, strained and desperate, breaks through the interference. "This is Specialist Zephyr Novak, transmitting on emergency channel. Whatever you do, don't open Chamber Epsilon. I repeat, keep Chamber Epsilon sealed. The rules exist for a reason." The transmission cuts abruptly, replaced by a high-pitched alarm and then nothing but dead air. 3 days later, a rescue team arrives at the International Space Station Artemis, responding to the emergency signal. They find the station intact but completely abandoned. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just empty corridors and silent rooms. In the eastern wing, a new set of rules has been etched into the wall, outside Chamber Epsilon. 12 now instead of 8. The obsidian anomaly has grown, covering the entire chamber from floor to ceiling. As the team prepares to leave, Navigator Orion Frost of the rescue vessel Helios pauses at the observation deck, staring at Earth below. "Something's wrong," he says slowly. "The coastlines, they're different." The rescue team's communications officer, Dr. Phoenix Lamar, joins him at the viewport, studying the familiar blue planet with growing unease. "It's exactly the same as always," Lamar replies, though uncertainty creeps into their voice. "No," Frost insists, tracing the outlines of continents with a trembling finger. "Look closer. Everything's shifted just slightly, as if..." "As if what?" asks Commander Indigo Wren, approaching from behind. Frost turns, his expression troubled. "As if we're looking at a different Earth, one that's almost but not quite our own." In the silence that follows, the station's systems hum back to life. Lights brightening, and air circulation resuming, as if welcoming the new arrivals home. On a monitor nearby, security footage from Chamber Epsilon appears unbidden, showing not the obsidian-covered room they had discovered, but the original chamber with its hovering anomaly intact. In front of it stands a figure in a copper-plated suit with blue markings, facing the camera. The figure reaches up slowly and removes its helmet, revealing a face that looks almost, but not quite, like Specialist Zephyr Novak. It smiles and the screen goes dark. 3 weeks later, a new crew arrives at the refurbished station, now designated Artemis 2. Among them is Specialist Callisto Vex, a quantum physicist with several controversial papers to their name. During orientation, Commander Octavia Thorndyke, a veteran astronaut with prematurely grey hair and a slight tremor in her left hand, presents them with a tablet containing a special briefing. "These are the rules for Chamber Epsilon," she explains, her expression grave. "There are 12 now. They will seem arbitrary, excessive. They are neither..." Vex begins to read. Rule 1. Chamber Epsilon visitation is permitted only on Thursdays between 3 PM and 5 PM station time. The cycle continues.